So there are some mixed thoughts on the looks of this phone. That makes sense. There's also some mixed thoughts on the specs of this phone, and that also makes sense. But I don't think there's any mixed opinions on one thing: it's a damn good deal. This is the CMF Phone 2 Pro. So for those of you keeping track, that means that the budget phone brand, Nothing, has an even more budget sub-brand called CMF that is making a Pro version of its second phone, even though there is no non-Pro version. Okay, so it's a little bit confusing, but the bottom line you should know is they've built a budget phone with a pretty distinct design and a set of features versus trade-offs to retail at $279, or if you're in India, 20,999 rupees. At this point, I'm pretty sure they're only using the word Pro because of the triple cameras. I feel like that makes it like an honorary Pro, like it looks like a Pro phone, kinda. That's kind of the only pro thing about it, but I think the point here mainly is that this looks and feels like a lot higher end of a phone than it actually is. Like, it is a big, bright, high refresh rate AMOLED display with a fingerprint reader underneath. It's thin, the bezels are pretty even all the way around. It's not too obtrusive with a little hole punch cutout for the selfie camera. And it's actually really light despite having a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. And then this plastic back piece, which I'll get more into in a second, feels kind of metallic on the bottom half, while the other colors are actually entirely metallic feeling. So is it ugly? Okay, I'd say it depends on who you ask. It's obviously unique looking with the flat back and the metal camera rings. Me personally, I don't exactly think it's beautiful, but luckily I don't have to look at the back of my phone very often, so let's just call it personality. But you got to admit, there's a whole mob of people who have been looking at slab phones year after year looking the same over and over again. So tame, not really taking any risks, not even really having colors lately. But this is personality. I mean, look at this orange. And it's also modular again, kinda. So here's the thing. So the CMF phone last year was also modular. It had the screws that came out the back came off, there were attachable accessories, which is cool. This year, it's also modular, but doesn't work with basically any of the accessories from that last CMF phone, except for the lanyard. So they're sticking with the modular idea, but not the previous modules. But the way it works is now there's still 4 screws on the back of the phone, plus the thumb screw in the bottom corner. You take those all out with the not included screwdriver, but the whole back of the phone doesn't actually come off anymore. Instead, there's just this add-on accessory back. So this back just slaps onto the phone. Then you put the screws back in, and now the back of the phone has camera lens mounts and the strongest MagSafe magnet array I've actually ever seen. So the magnets, they're a no-brainer. Go ahead and stick all kinds of accessories onto the back of the phone. MagSafe accessories, other random magnetic stuff. CMF made accessories also stick. They made this wallet that holds a few cards and then also acts as a vertical kickstand when you fold this piece here down. Pretty nice. And then unlike the Apple MagSafe wallet, which I kind of had beef with because I felt like it would fall off way too easily for a wallet, this one actually feels locked onto the back of the phone because these magnets are so strong. The phone doesn't have wireless charging, but it's still convenient to be able to throw it up on your dash or on a desk mount or anything else like that, just to hold stuff. And then the camera mount. Okay, so this is another crazy idea that honestly may only last 1 year, but the idea is this plastic ring around the primary camera is a mounting point for a couple of external lenses. So CMF actually made 2 lenses, a macro and a fisheye, that literally just pop onto the back of the phone like this over the best camera, that primary 50 megapixel. So the idea is cool. The personality is very real. I think if I was dailying this phone, I would just leave the white back on my phone all the time. So I could always use the magnets. And if I ever wanted to attach accessories, I could just pop it on. Now, the actual lenses CMF has made, I would just say, they're fine. They accomplish what they're supposed to do, okay? There are other phones that can take comparable or even better macro photos with a built-in macro camera. And the fisheye, it's a unique look. Maybe you're into that. It's just fun. The main camera by itself, even without the attachment lenses, is just fine. It's got this warmish, pinkish cast on a lot of photos, and it definitely overexposes a lot of the time, but it doesn't have any horrible, catastrophic issues. As someone who takes a lot of pictures, these 2 attachment lenses have me thinking like, oh, what if they also made like an 85 millimeter or like a portrait photo lens or something like that? But I don't want to get my hopes up because that may never exist. And, we get these two, that's cool, but will we ever see anyone else making lens accessories for this phone? Probably not. Also, there's no place to hold these lenses. So you get them, you take them out the packaging, and then they're just kind of loose, and they're very easy to fingerprint and kind of hard to clean. And the more you have to deal with that, the less you actually want to carry them around with you. But using this phone, I just want to make one thing very clear. This is the best software in any new phone under about $400. It is just so clear. I know there are clean One UI phones that are cheap and some Redmi phones at this price point, etc. But this is one of those things that came from OnePlus to nothing and now to CMF by transitive property. It's just great software chops. Same as the more premium Nothing phones. Smooth animations everywhere, a few extra features here and there, some custom widgets, the dots motif is everywhere. But it's definitely not too overwhelming. It's also not filled with ads at this price. I mean, this is what you interact with every day. This is when you're using the phone, what makes it easy to forget that it's such a cheap phone. None of the features here in Nothing OS 3.2 are artificially removed from the cheap phone. Like nothing is locked to just a higher end chip or anything like that. It even has the extra button they added on the side for the essential space to open that early stage AI info collection tool thing that they started building. If I never turn this phone around, you might look at it and think it's a Nothing 3A Pro because they're just that close. And this display, I think, is the real strong point. This really seals the deal with what I said. Like, it's a big 6.77-inch panel, 1080p, adaptive 120 hertz AMOLED. It's super responsive. It has a 480 hertz touch sample rate. It gets plenty bright. This one literally up to 3000 nits in HDR, but 1300 nits full screen brightness outdoors. And it even has 2160 hertz PWM dimming. So I think I like everything about this screen at this price. Literally the only thing I'm not a huge fan of is the pre-installed screen protector, because it has this little cutout around the selfie camera and it's not that smooth. But look, one of these phones is $279 and the other one is $459. That's not bad. Now, there's a reason I haven't really talked about the rest of the specs with this phone, just because honestly, they're not that high on the list of reasons why I would get it. But in case you care, it's running a MediaTek Dimensity 7300 Pro, and I'd say it's perfectly fine for the job. It benchmarks right around the Snapdragon 865, if you remember that. It's about a 5-year-old flagship chip, and it's fine enough to handle some occasional games or heavy multitasking, but also is totally fine just scrolling around and doing regular social media stuff. It also has 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage with a microSD card slot for expanding it. There's also a 128 gig version of this phone outside of the US that's even cheaper. It does not have wireless charging like I mentioned earlier, but it does add back NFC. The last CMF phone did not have that. This one does, so it can do contactless payments and all that good stuff. The haptics are pretty good. The single speaker on the bottom is terrible, but it also is IP54 rated, so it can get splashed and be fine. And then there is a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which for a phone this thin, I feel like is actually pretty impressive. It's also 33 watt charging, and battery life has been very good. And then of course on the back, there's our triple cameras, because it wouldn't be a Pro phone without triple cameras. Now if you're thinking, all right, it's a cheap phone, so there's pretty much no chance the cameras are actually really good, but they're probably just good enough in regular lighting to get a pass, and maybe the triple cameras are kind of just a stunt to get people to see it as more pro. And then you'd be right. The primary camera is a 50 megapixel sensor with no OIS, and yeah, it's fine. Don't expect to have your mind blown. It works, but like I said, some pink casting, it's not going to do any miracles. Not a lot of depth of field or fast shutter speeds because of the lack of OIS. The telephoto is also only 2x, so it's not a huge zoom, and it's also on a much smaller sensor, so it's sacrificing a lot of light and quality for not a lot of zoom. And then the ultra-wide is in fact much wider than the main camera, so that's good. But it's also a tiny sensor and it's just 8 megapixels, so it's just kind of more of a fun to have, which I'll accept. I'm glad it has an ultra-wide at all. But between the software and the display, and then all the fun choices they've made with the modularity, it's a great fun phone, but it almost makes me wonder what it would have been like if there was a genuinely high-end version of this available too. And then I think maybe we've already seen that. I don't know if you remember the Moto Z back a couple years ago with the Moto mods. That was kind of similar, attaching things to the back of the phone that were fun and functional and gave it real character. In the meantime though, for $279, I Honestly, wish this had like all of the bands in the US, because this would be even easier to recommend if it did. But especially elsewhere, I think this is the best budget phone out this year. I'm a fan. There's been a lot of action in like the mid-range phone price, like the $400 space, the iPhone 16e, the Pixel 9a, everything in there. But for sub 300, this is where it's at. Subscribe to see if anything else better comes out this year though. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.